welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature, Small Cats of the Indian Subcontinent, presented by Surya Ramachandran. Surya is one of India's top expedition leaders. He's been guiding with NatHab for over 4 years now. He's been one of our most popular presenters here on the Daily Dose, so you all are in for a treat. You'll soon see, if you haven't heard him before, that his passion and knowledge for the wildlife on the Indian subcontinent is incredible, unparalleled, I would say. So, Surya, we're honored to have you here today. Thank you again so much for coming back, and I'll hand things over to you.
Thank you so much, Ted. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry again about the issue with the webcam. I actually trimmed my beard and try to look good for this, but I will have to make do with just the cats for today. So that's me. For those of you who can't see my screen, that's me, and I've been guiding for NatHab, like Ted said. And one of my key interests, like most people in the world, has interestingly been about cats. So there is a little bit of a confusion here with regards to the number of cats in the world. Some people say it's 38, some people say it's 36, some people say it's 40. But I know roughly based on all the reading up which I've been doing, trying to update myself, it's been zeroed in on 38 wildcat species in the world, spread across all continents except Australia and Antarctica. So those are except Australia and Antarctica, we have wildcats all over the world. And of course, there are two kinds of cats. So before we jump into the world of small cats, we really need to know what a small cat is. So first we'll move to the picture on the right. You can see that there is a large pad of a big male tiger, and within that pad is a small pad of a jungle cat, which is a small cat. So the first obvious difference is that the big cats are big and the small cats are small. But there is a little bit more to it than that. For example, if you look at the image or the illustrations to the left by my dear friend Rohan from Green Humor, you can see that there is a lion, there's a tiger, there's a leopard, there's a jaguar, and there is a snow leopard. And then after that, the last four, the puma or the mountain lion, the clouded leopard, the other kind of clouded leopard, which is found in Borneo, and the cheetah. The last four especially, there is a little bit of contention with regards to whether they're actually big cats. The reason for this is that one of the key features of a big cat is that there is a particular bone in their larynx or their voice producing muscle in their throat, which is in big cats, it's more like a stretchable tendon. So what happens is it stretches so much that they can actually create low bass roaring sounds. So in a sense, you can say that big cats can roar. Another way of putting it is that big cats belong to the genus Panthera. So if you go back to the previous slide, you can see that the first five, the lion, tiger, leopard, jaguar, and the snow leopard, belong to the genus Panthera, whereas the last four fall under different groups which are restricted to their smaller spaces. So there is a little bit of a tension with regards to what is really a big cat. There is a little bit of confusion there. If you look at different documents, they will all say different things. But today, with respect to our talk, we are going to talk about big cats and small cats with this arrangement that you see in front of you. So in India and in the Indian subcontinent, interestingly, we have 15 species of wildcats. Can you believe that? 15 species of wildcats. In the whole of the African continent, there are 10 species of wildcats. And India, which is much smaller, it has 15 species of wildcats. And what is interesting is that all of this is possible only because of the sheer diversity of habitats that the Indian subcontinent holds. So as we jump further into the world of small cats, you'll realize how much of different habitat varieties we actually hold within the realms of what we call the Indian subcontinent. So in this, as you can see, there are 5 big cats which are there on the top: the Bengal tiger, the Asiatic lion, leopard, snow leopard, and the clouded leopard. And then we have 10 species of small cats which we will be looking into in detail today.
Hey, Surya, sorry to interrupt there. If you could back away from the computer just a little bit, your voice is breaking up a little bit because you're a little too close to the microphone. So if you just back up a little bit.
Is this fine?
Yep, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. I was just trying to get a closer look at the cats in my screen. Okay, here we go. So small cats. So now we've seen what makes a big cat and a small cat, at least with respect to this presentation. But there is a lot of similarities within small cats. And the first most important thing is that they are very secretive. So small cats are generally not as obviously seen. If most of you would have been on safaris in India or Africa or any part of the world, and when you go looking for big cats, you have a higher chance of seeing the big cats, and for the small cats, you'll have to go looking for them probably in the night or probably in certain specific habitats, or you have to go wait somewhere. And that's kind of how small cats work. They thrive by blending in. And most of them hold very interesting habitat niches. As you can see here, there is this fishing cat, which we'll be talking about later. And this cat lives exclusively in the mangrove forests in the coastal belts of India. And also in some very marshy inland waterways. And small cats also are restricted to what they can hunt because of their size. They obviously cannot bring down everything that walks in front of them like the big cats do. So small cats also need a good prey base to thrive in the habitats that they occupy. And of course, being small, having a niche habitat and being dependent on selective prey, there are a lot of problems they face. We'll be looking at the problems faced by small cats and the conservation issues of small cats after we get to know what the small cats are. So we're going to do all 10 small cats, but before that, I'd like to start with the smallest small cat in the world. And interestingly, this is a cat which is endemic to the Indian subcontinent. And this is the rusty spotted cat. And it is found in most of India, at least most of mainland India and all of Sri Lanka. So when I say it is one of the smallest wildcats in the world, I'd like to elaborate that by saying this cat weighs about a kilogram or a kilogram and a half, 1 to 1.5 kilograms. That's literally the size of a mid-sized kitten. And when we see this cat in the wild, you can hardly believe that the cat is so small and it's surviving by itself in the wild and feeding on things like grasshoppers and geckos and whatever it can hold on. It's a very, very active cat and very nocturnal too. Because of its small size, it needs to have a very secretive lifestyle to survive. So before we jump in, I'd like to show you what are the features of this cat. A white lined lip, a white lined eye, 2 white stripes which are black bordered on the face. The rusty spots, if you look closely, you can see rusty spots on the side of its body, and the cylindrical tail. These are the key features of the rusty spotted cat. And these cats, interestingly, occupy a very wide variety of habitats within their range. So they've been seen in rainforests, deciduous forests, agricultural fields, living amongst villages, and sometimes even in urban surrounds. So being small and being able to hunt everything that moves in that size range of a grasshopper or a gecko, they can pretty much thrive in any habitat where there's a little bit of tree cover and a little bit of prey base available to them in the night. So they are a very, very widespread cat. And interestingly, studies have shown, and I've seen this just once, they are very arboreal cats. So they spend the days on trees, and sometimes they spend the days in tree holes, and they descend at night to move amongst the forest floor and hunt amongst the forest floor. And especially when they have little ones, especially when they have kittens, the kittens are raised amongst the trees because that is where most of their protection is. So that is the rusty spotted cat, one of the smallest wild cats in the world and a cat that's endemic to the Indian subcontinent. The next one, another widespread member, you can actually see the range of the jungle cat on the map to the right. It's a very widespread cat. It's found all over the Indian subcontinent, and it is also goes into Persia and northern Africa. So this is a cat that's common to both the Indian and the African regions, the jungle cat. And the best way to tell a jungle cat is, of course, the long legs, the stripes on the insides of the legs, the pointed ears, and the black-tipped short tail. So these cats, again, are very widespread in the Indian region, like I told you. They're found in fields, agricultural land, forests, rainforests, hill forests, and also mangrove areas. So all the way from the coast to the high mountains, except the snow-covered areas. I don't think jungle cats have been recorded in the snow-covered belts of India, but they've been found everywhere else, including the deserts of the Indian subcontinent. So as you can see here, there is this jungle cat in the mangrove on the photo to the left. And mangroves, I've been using that word often. I'd like to establish what it is. Mangroves are basically coastal forests that we have in India, and they actually are found only in tidal areas. So where there is a change in tide, where the brackish seawater moves in and moves out, there you have the growth of these mangrove forests. And as you can see in the image, they survive by shooting their roots out of the mud and into the sky, so that even when the ground is submerged, the roots are exposed and can survive the tidal changes. So mangroves are very important habitats and very important ecosystems. And one of the most popular mangroves, of course, is the Sundarbans, which is the home of the Royal Bengal tiger. So the jungle cat to the left is seen in the mangroves, and to the right, it's catching a mouse in the agricultural fields somewhere in India. And also Sri Lanka, it's quite widespread in Sri Lanka. So jungle cats, interestingly, so I've seen them take down mice, I've seen them take down small birds, but there are records of jungle cats taking down things as big as porcupines. So porcupines are actually bigger than jungle cats, but they manage to take them down. So very often we see them at night hunting in the fields amongst tall grass cover, sometimes in marshes, but in protected areas where they don't have to hide and wait till the night to expose themselves. You can actually see them hunting out in the day, especially if you are on the Grand India Wildlife Expedition, which covers quite a few parks. There is a very high chance that you will see a jungle cat in the open grasslands looking for prey in the day. And if you come in the summer months, and that's when they have their kittens, they usually give birth to a litter of 3 to 4 young ones. And because of the adversities with regards to their size and most of them surviving in semi-forested habitats, the jungle cats actually don't survive. Not all kittens survive to adulthood. So probably just 2 to 3 of them amongst the 4, or maybe even just one amongst the 4 survives to adulthood. The next widespread small cat that we have in the Indian subcontinent, this beautiful cat, is the leopard cat. And the name and how it looks is very obvious. But one interesting feature about this cat is the fat, stout tail that it has. And that shows that this cat is designed very exclusively for an arboreal lifestyle. So very often we see this cat amongst trees or in only forested areas. So unlike the rusty spotted cat and the jungle cat, you seldom see the leopard cat in non-forested areas. Though it is widespread, it needs a forest cover to survive. And they survive amongst trees, hunting anything they can overcome, including birds, geckos, sometimes snakes, and maybe even insects for the younger ones. So leopard cats, widespread, but only in forested areas and extremely arboreal. So here you can see a leopard cat. This is typical of a leopard cat habitat, a very dense undergrowth for them to move without being seen when they're moving through the forest floor. and of course a lot of tall trees and smaller size trees for them to take cover and hunt in. And this cat, interestingly, is probably far more nocturnal than the earlier two cats that we have seen, because probably it is also the reason that they spend most of their days in the trees, so you don't get to see them. But every time I've seen one only on the ground, and that has been only in the night. There have been some pictures in the wild of leopard cats moving around in the day or crossing a road. So we really don't know what the population dynamics or the behavioral pattern of leopard cats are, at least in the Indian region, because they are so rarely seen. And when you see them on the forest floor when they move between habitat patches. And interestingly, when I tell you that it's a forest cat, they are also found in the mangroves. So the mangroves is a very interesting ecosystem holding a tiger, they hold leopard cats, they hold jungle cats, and a few other cat species. So a leopard cat, which requires hill forests and dense undergrowth, is also managing to survive in an ecosystem as harsh with brackish water and spiky roots like the mangrove ecosystem. So definitely widespread, but a lot of work needs to be done on understanding the population dynamics of these cats and figure out exactly where they are found and what they prefer in the Indian region. So this is an interesting picture of a leopard cat in the high Himalayas. So this is the snow belt of the Himalayas, and this cat is seen in the grassy slopes in the high Himalayan mountains. So all the way from the coastal belts to the grassy slopes of the Himalayan region, the leopard cat is quite widespread. In fact, if I go back to the first slide of leopard cats, you can see that the cat is found all the way to Japan and the Amur region of Russia. And they have different subspecies all over, but they have managed to survive from the hot and humid coastal forests to the snow-covered forests of Kamchatka and the Amur land in Russia and Japan. So that's how adaptable and widespread these cats are, but still very poorly studied and very less often seen. In fact, I think you have a realistic chance of seeing a leopard cat only in Borneo and the forests of Malaysia, like Taman Negara or somewhere. That's a better proposition to find these cats than in the Indian region. Next, we come to a cat which requires a niche habitat, not as widespread as the others, as you can see from the distribution maps, and that is the fishing cat. So unlike the earlier members, these cats are not found across multiple habitats. They are found only in marshy Himalayan foothill forests, excuse me, and also in the coastal mangrove beds. So that is the habitat of the fishing cat. And interestingly, unlike the previous cats, this cat is actually quite big. They can weigh up to 15 to 16 kilograms, which is the size of a small dog. And they're very stocky, very powerful. And there have been records of fishing cats killing leopard cats. In fact, there's been a record of a fishing cat killing a leopard cat, killing a leopard in captivity. So they're actually very tough animals. And I've seen a fishing cat a couple of times, and they definitely do not come under the small cat category if you go just by size. In fact, they're actually kind of as big as a clouded leopard. But of course, we are not talking about just size as a comparison for small cats. So we are going to put this under small cats for now. And of course, one of the key ways to tell a fishing cat apart is the facial features, the white lined lip and eyes, the dark stripes on its cheek and the trailing eye stripe that it has, and of course the black spots that the fishing cat has throughout. And apart from this, a short tail and a stocky build is a fishing cat's telltale signs. So here's a portrait of a fishing cat, a camera trap image of a fishing cat catching fish. And they are designed perfectly, and in fact they have very large canines to grab fish. And also, this is also a cat which is less often known for its ability to survive in aquatic ecosystems. So when you talk about cats, a lot of people say only the jaguar and the tiger are the two cats that do not refrain from going into water. But the fishing cat actually jumps into water to catch fish quite often, almost on a daily basis. So, but apart from fish, they catch other things like crabs. They will even catch birds. They will catch anything they can get their hands on. But they are actually designed to catch fish. So if you look at their pads, they are actually a cat which have partial webbing inside their digits. So their pads are like somewhere between an otter and a cat, designed perfectly to survive in land and in water, like the otter does. So very flayed fingers, which help them like have webbing inside to navigate the aquatic ecosystems that they live in. In fact, fishing cats are also quite adaptable. So we, in some parts of the country, have a lot of fish farms where people have big ponds in their backyard and they grow fish. And fishing cats, interestingly, have managed to colonize these fish farm areas, which are actually semi-urban areas. And they have managed to colonize those areas by maybe spending the days amongst reeds or amongst sewers and coming out at night and just hunting in selective fishing ponds and going back to hiding in the day. In fact, there is a study which showed that there were almost 20 fishing cats in one of these areas. And you rarely see them unless you go out at night, like you can see in the picture to the right. So that's a fish farm where people are growing fish in that pond, and the cats come there and hunt the fish through the night. It's quite an exciting way to see this fishing cat. That's how I've seen my fishing cats too. And interestingly, like I told you, from the mangroves, from the fishing ponds, they're also found in marshy, swampy forest areas, like this fishing cat here. So moving away from the swamps, moving away from the coast, we go into the deserts of India. And here we have the specialist desert inhabitant, which is the desert cat or the Asiatic wildcat. So when I say wildcat, there is a wildcat which is found all over Europe and in the Russian region and everywhere, all over the woodland forests of mainland Europe. So this cat is actually a subspecies of the European wildcat. But in India, it looks very, very different. It's very sandy colored, very marked with black spotting and stripes. But one of the key features of the wildcat is the pointy, prominent ears and the banded tail. So the wildcat across Europe, definitely much darker, but in India, it is designed for the desert. So it is the sandy coat, and its lifestyle and the way it behaves is very different, as we are going to see. So this cat survives primarily in these scanty bush ecosystems that we have amongst the dunes in India. They are found in other areas also where there is dry forest areas, but the best place to see the desert cat is actually the Thar Desert in Rajasthan. So there they burrow and stay cool in the hot days by digging a shallow burrow in the sand, and they come out at dusk and dawn and through the night to hunt for things like rats, mice, locusts. Sometimes they take hedgehogs, they take snakes, so they take anything. They're actually the top predator in this desert ecosystem. So we really don't have big cats or large canids here. We have foxes and the desert cat, and this is one of the interesting cases where the small cat is the apex predator and the regulator of the ecosystem. So you can see the desert cat to the left hunting a rat, and to the right you can see that it has a few kittens, and they've come to relax at the edge of the burrow. So all of this in the desert region of the Indian subcontinent. But one interesting thing about the desert cat is that it comes in multiple morphs. So you have the sandy colored cat to the left with prominent bright black spotting, and then you have a very pale gray cat with very diffuse spotting, and you have a very brownish variant, as you can see to the right, which again has a very different spot arrangement. So when you look for a desert cat, it's very often confusing when you see a cat, especially in semi-urban areas, to confirm whether it's a desert cat or not. So this is a case where it makes it very clear that we really need to know how a small cat looks exactly before we can get confused between a wild small cat and a feral cat, because feral cats are also widespread across all habitats. So one of the key things that we need to look out for in small cats is every feature: the tall ears, the different markings on the face, the different markings on the sides of the body, the proportions of its body, the habitat, how it's behaving. All of these features are key before we can confirm whether the cat we are looking at is indeed a wild cat or is a feral cat. So especially when most of these cats, we see them at night, you don't get great views. They're probably covered by bushes. You're seeing through your binoculars. So in such situations, it can actually be very difficult to identify small cats. The next one, of course, a lot of you are familiar with, especially if you've been to Africa. This is the caracal. But what is interesting is that we have the caracal in India too. And we get the caracal in India in dry deciduous forests of northern India, because they like the thorny scrub jungle of northern India where they blend in well. So the caracal is actually found all across Persia, India, and the African subcontinent. And what is interesting about this cat is that in India, we don't know anything about this cat. We know that it is found in some forest patches. We know that it is seen once or twice a year. But interestingly, we may have as few as 100 to 200 caracal in India. But if you go to Iran or if you go to parts of Africa, they are far greater in number and very well studied. In fact, in Cape Town in South Africa, there is actually a population of urban caracals, where there are a couple of people studying these urban caracals there. But in India, we are far from it, and that's why I call them the forgotten cats of India. So these cats, like the fishing cat, are also quite big. They can get to about 6 to 8 kilograms, unlike the other wild cats, which average about 3 to 4 kilograms. And they're very tall with their prominent tall ears. And what is interesting about the caracal is that it has longer hind legs as compared to its forelegs. So it is designed to jump great lengths to catch prey. So there are also videos of the caracal catching birds in flight, because they can jump up to 12 feet high. So the caracal in India is a very interesting story. We actually don't know much about the current status, but historically there are a lot of records of caracal in different habitats. But there have also been a lot of records of hunting of caracals, and there's a lot of areas where they were historically found, but there have been no recent findings of caracal. So if I have to say it boldly, the caracal is probably the first wildcat that may disappear from the Indian subcontinent if we don't study it properly. In fact, the local name of the caracal is Sia Ghosh, and the literal translation of that is a cat with the ears like a hare or a rabbit, and that is pretty obvious from the way a caracal looks. Another key feature of a caracal, which I forgot to mention, is a very short, stubby tail. So caracals in India, the one place where you have a good chance of seeing a caracal, if you spend a lot of time focusing to find a caracal, is Ranthambore National Park, which is of course the most popular tiger destination. But caracals are found here around the park, amongst the fields, and in some of the areas of the park where tigers are not great in number. So here the caracals occupy the scrub jungle and the grasslands, and even here it is very, very difficult to see one. In fact, I've never seen a caracal in India, and I've seen them only in Africa. So like I said, we don't know much about the caracals in India, but there was a recent article published by Conservation India about caracals being used for hunting as pets by some communities in India. So they were used for wild grouse hunting, partridge hunting, because of their innate skill to hunt these birds. So they were actually kept as pets by people and taken out in a bullock cart into the field and then released to capture wild game birds for the family and for sport. So I'm sure when this happened, there was a lot of loss of the wild caracal population. So there has been some studies which actually say that caracals don't breed as prolifically as other cats. They're very selective in their breeding and they're very sensitive. So you can imagine that a caracal will definitely not manage to breed. At least the Indian population will not manage to breed in captivity. So you can assume why the population has declined so much and the range has declined so much in the last century. So moving away from the deserts and the dry thorn scrub forests, we are going to go into the high Himalayas and the cold desert plateau of Ladakh. And here we have the Eurasian lynx. A lot of you would be familiar with the lynx for sure, because you have the Canadian lynx and the bobcat all over North America, which are also lynx species. And we have the Eurasian lynx in a lot of Europe and the Himalayan region and the Tibetan region of Central Asia and India. And you also have an interesting lynx species in Spain called the Iberian lynx, which is probably one of the rarest small cats in the world. So we're not going to talk about other species of lynx. We're going to stick to the Eurasian lynx. Definitely one of those cats which don't contend properly for the small cat spectrum, because they weigh about 26 kilograms. I mean, they weigh as big as a big dog, and actually bigger than some of the big cats like your clouded leopard or the cheetah sometimes. So it's a very big, stocky cat, but because of the anatomical features, we do place them under small cats, and we're going to talk about them now. So this is the habitat of a lynx. So if you look at the animal as such, you can see it's quite similar to a caracal, a much shorter tail, a much more stocky build. But like the caracal, it has tall pointy ears and longer hind legs and shorter forelegs. So the lynx is found in India in quite a few areas, especially Ladakh and parts of the Himalayas. And here, this cat survives generally in high altitude steppe habitat. So when I say steppe, it is going to be high altitude areas with a lot of open ground with a few bushes for cover and a lot of grassy clumps, so that there is enough of prey supported. So the lynx in India, interestingly, feeds a lot on the woolly hare, which is found in the Himalayas, and also species of pika, which is like a small rodent. So wherever you find a lot of woolly hare and pika and a little bit of grass and bush cover, you can be sure that a lynx is around. And there's also a lot of variety with the coat of the lynx. So the lynx comes in a very rusty coat and also a very gray coat, and you also have a spotted variety of lynx in India. So we don't know whether there are subspecies or just color morphs. And in some cases, I've actually seen lynx which have a different coat in the summer and a different coat in the winter. So this picture to the left is obviously taken in the summer months. As you can see, the amount of green that's around. And the winters, they can become overall paler in their color plumage. And unlike most small cats, the lynx is actually a conflict animal because of its size and its ability to bring down things like domestic goats. There is a lot of conflict with regards to lynx. So this village in Ladakh is actually one of the best places to see the lynx. But there is also a little bit of conflict with regards to the lynx, and they're very often found inside sheep and goat pens where they've tried to get in and they can't figure out a way to get out. And sometimes they're captured like this and then taken to a zoo or re-released in the wild. But in most cases, they are killed by the locals because they do take their livestock. So interestingly, this is one of the few small cats which are actually a conflict problem for humans that they live around them. And quite opposite to the lynx is the Pallas's cat, which is also found in similar habitats of the high Himalaya and Tibet. And this is definitely the opposite of the lynx, and it is not a conflict animal. In fact, the locals in most places where the Pallas's cat is found don't even know about the existence of this cat. It is such a secretive cat, very small. It is actually quite active in the day and night, but because of its inconspicuous ways and its non-association with the humans around it, or it doesn't even depend on the humans around it for anything, for prey, for the habitat or anything, uh, people don't even know about this cat, even including the local herders of sheep and goat. They don't even know about this cat. So very few people know about the Pallas's cat in India. In fact, it is quite commonly seen in Mongolia, but in India, it is found only in some of the northern extremes, especially plateaus which are above 4,500 meters with a little bit of marsh, and that is a typical habitat of the Pallas's cat. So the Latin name goes Ontocolobus manul, and Ontocolobus literally means ugly ears. I definitely don't think the ears are ugly, but that is what the cat is named after, Ontocolobus. That's what the genus is called. So the Pallas's cat probably is the strangest looking member I've come across. It has a beautiful tail, but it is so covered in hair all over that it looks like the cat is levitating when it walks. The legs aren't really visible, especially if it's crouching and walking, because the legs get tucked into the body, and all you see is like a hairy thing, like a hairy rug moving flat on the ground, and that's kind of how the Pallas's cat looks. So they seek refuge in these rocky escarpments around the marshes, and then go into the marshes to hunt for rodents and small birds. And you can see how beautifully this cat can camouflage when it's sitting in the rocky area. So this picture was taken by me and a friend of mine, and we saw this cat just sitting out there amongst the rocks. But if you take your eye away and then look back in the direction, every time you'll take about 2 to 3 seconds to reorient your eye to the presence of the Pallas's cat. So quite an interesting animal, above 4,500 meters in the marshes of the high Himalaya. So that's kind of how they look, and that is the habitat that they thrive in. Again, a cat which is poorly studied. We don't really know how many Pallas's cats we have. We just know that we see them in some hotspots in Ladakh and North Sikkim. And that's pretty much it regarding the Pallas's cat in India. This is a very, very rare image of the Pallas's cat with 2 kittens out in the open marsh in the summer months. And we actually don't see them a lot in the winter months. So we don't know if they move away from the marshes looking for other species to feed on, or other species or other habitats to find prey in. So we actually don't know much about the Pallas's cat in India, except that we see them in a few places and they look quite cool. And coming to the forests of the Himalaya, especially the northeastern Himalayan region, probably one of the most beautiful members of the small cat world. In fact, this cat has the longest tail as compared to body size of any cat species in the world. So this is the marbled cat. So the tail can be up to half a meter for a cat that weighs up only about 3 to 4 kilograms, which means that the tail is a huge part of its life, which generally translates to a very arboreal lifestyle. So the marble cat, you can very obviously tell that the name it gets is because of the marbling all over its body. And it is most often seen only in camera traps and very rarely encountered in the wild, because they live in very, very dense evergreen forests, and they spend most of their days and nights in trees. And when they descend, they move amongst dense undergrowth. So it's very, very hard to see or even study these marble cats. So most of the studies is done on marble cats only using camera traps. And there is also a huge population issue with marble cats, simply because they are heavily persecuted for their pelt, and they're also often hunted and caught in traps. And if you go to some of the tribal households in the areas where the marble cats are found, especially the northeastern region of India, a lot of those households will have pelts of marble cat. And that's the only pelt. The pelt is only as close as I've ever gotten to a marble cat, and I've not seen it otherwise. This is a very rare picture of a marble cat kitten in the wild, taken in the Himalayan foothill forest again. And I just wanted to show this to show how important the tail is to identify a marble cat. It's a beautiful, beautiful animal with a huge tail. But again, we don't know much about the marble cat, except that it's found all across Southeast Asia and is very often seen in camera traps in well-wooded, humid forests. Another cat of Southeast Asia and the Himalayas, again a very biggish cat which can weigh up to 12 kilograms, is the golden cat. And this cat, interestingly, is found across Southeast Asia, And there is a population also found in the Central African rainforests. So I don't know how there's two disjunct population of the same species of golden cat, but it is actually found, proving that there was once a land bridge that connected India and the African subcontinent. So a very interesting study that would be to compare how the genetic diversity of the golden cat population in Africa and India matches. So obviously the most distinct feature of the golden cat is the pale markings on the face. But apart from that, it's a very golden brown to rusty brown cat, very stocky built, definitely not as arboreal as the marble cat, but it is found moving through dense Himalayan undergrowth and bamboo forests. So this is a picture of a golden cat in the night. You can see it's a much paler individual. Again, but the telltale signs are the white pale markings on its face. So this cat interestingly goes to a higher elevations of the Himalayas. It goes up to, I would say, about 3,000 meters or even higher, where there is the short bamboo with a lot of small birds and a lot of pikas and rodents and voles. And that is, interestingly, the prey base of the golden cat. But the most striking feature of the golden cat is the number of different morphs it is found in. All of these 6 images that you see are golden cats, camera trapped in the wild. And I'm not talking about populations which are found in different areas. All of these are actually from one small forest patch in the northeast of India. You can see that the pale markings on the face are the only constant in all these cases. But in every other way, the golden cat's coat is very different from each other. There are probably more number of morphs of golden cat in the wild, but I've never come across a cat that can be so variable within the same species as the golden cat does in the wilds of India. So this is another picture to give you another idea of how the golden cat looks. One interesting feature about the golden cat is that it has very dark paws and feet. So dark paws, feet, a black tip tail, and the white markings on the face are the key features of this stocky Himalayan cat, which is found in the Indian region. And that is the last of the 10 small cats in India. So a very interesting group. And what they do and the problems they face is quite complex, because if you had followed what I was saying, we don't really know much about even the most widespread of the small cats in the Indian subcontinent, because they're just hard to study. We don't know how many of their populations we have. We don't know what are their preferences. There is a whole lot of different things we don't know about small cats. But the one thing we can be sure of is that they are very important regulators of the ecosystem. In some cases, like I told you, they are the apex predators. And what they do is, especially the cats which feed on rodents and insects, the role played by ground-dwelling rodents and insects is that they loosen the soil by their constant digging. So when they loosen the soil, what happens is they encourage regrowth of plants. But if they keep digging, what happens is it all drives the reactions in one way, and the excessive growth also has its own counter effects. So small cats feeding on these things actually regulates the floral diversity of an area. So a very, very important part of the ecosystem in multiple layers is the presence of small cats. And I'm going to make it very clear and say that whatever benefits I'm talking about is only to wild small cats and not feral cats like this one, which are found in forested areas nowadays, unfortunately, because they've just been let loose and they've figured out their way to survive in the wild. So feral cats are actually one of the biggest problems faced by the small cat community in India, because there's a lot of crossbreeding between feral cats and wild small cats. So we're actually losing the wild gene pool of small cats. Now, apart from that, feral cats also cause a lot of damage to the bird life, to the habitat. So there is a huge problem with regards to feral cats in India. And the benefits of small cats I'm talking about is only restricted to wildcats. So like I told you, the desert cat in Rajasthan and the jungle cat in some agricultural habitats are the apex predators. So we all know how important apex predators are and the importance they get in conservation. But if you look at small cats too, they are the apex predators in some of the areas that they occupy. And they require the same amount of importance too for their conservation and their studies. A new problem faced by small cats in India is the feral dogs. So feral dogs are now probably one of the biggest conservation problems in our country. They are widespread, they're found in forests, they carry disease, they associate with packs and hunt wildlife, and they have learned to survive in the wild. So what is happening with feral dogs is they take down anything they can come across. So they take down deer, they take down gazelle, and ever so often they take down things like civets and small cats. This picture was taken by Rishikesh in the coffee estates of Coorg, where this feral dog has taken down a leopard cat kitten. Usually small cats are very smart and they climb a tree or they figure out a way to get away. But feral dogs overall have been causing damage, especially in open areas where jungle cats and desert cats live, where they don't have trees to climb. So if they're caught out in the open, they usually get killed by feral dogs. So this is what I was talking about with regards to hybridization. So we saw how a jungle cat looks. It's a very pale sandy cat. But this cat over here looks like a very interesting cross between a feral cat and the jungle cat. So like the jungle cat, the rusty spotted cat, the desert cat, and also maybe the leopard cat do crossbreed with feral cats, and that is affecting their gene pool, especially in semi-urban areas, which is not a good thing. So cats like this are very often seen in even wild areas and around villages, and we can be sure that this cat has crossed. It's a cross between a wild jungle cat and a feral cat. So going back to what I mentioned earlier, it is very important to know every single feature of a small cat before we confidently identify a small cat as a small wild cat. And of course, when you have a cat which is so secretive, requires habitat niches, and suddenly you have a huge industry that comes there or a road which cuts through, there is going to be damage to the population of small cats. And this is actually an unfortunate situation on the right, where the fishing cat was captured by the villagers next to the fish ponds and it was killed immediately. Because any cat that big, which is a wild cat, they just get scared of. There's a huge education problem in that front. But overall, the situation with the fishing cat in those habitats is good. Unlike the fishing cat, the jungle cat, which is so widespread, and the rusty spotted cat, and even the desert cat, face a lot more problems because most of their habitat is flat open country, very easily developed for roads and even industries. So a lot of these cats are losing their habitat and coming closer and closer to human civilization on a daily basis. And that is making scenes like the image on the left quite common in some parts of the country if you drive around the roads in the morning. So a lack of knowledge, a difficulty to study these cats, the extreme environments they are found in, and their small size and secretive ways make it very, very difficult to overall study and understand and conserve small cats. But one thing we can be very, very sure of is that the loss of small cats is going to be a big, big problem. The imbalance is going to be huge. And that is something that we need to keep in mind every time we talk about small cats as compared to the importance of big cats. Thank you so much. I hope all that was clear. I'm sorry about the issues with the audio and with my webcam.
Surya, that was just fantastic. Thank you so much. Once again, you have demonstrated just an incredible depth of knowledge and passion for many species that I know a number of us have never even heard of before. So that was really enlightening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted.
Before we get into the questions, I just want to remind everybody that you have an opportunity to ask Surya questions. The question feature within the GoToWebinar box there you've got on your screen, the interface. We will get to as many of those as we can. The first question that was very prevalent throughout is, have any of these wild small cats been domesticated, or is it legal or illegal to domesticate them? Do you ever see that happening?
Yes, in fact, all your domestic cats are descendants of wildcats. So historically, they've all been domesticated at some point, especially the jungle cat, the leopard cat, and probably the wildcat in Europe. And all of these cats actually originated only from wildcats historically, and they've been domesticated at some point in history. But to be more specific to our current times, yes, there is some cases of domestication of cats, like the sand cat in Egypt and Central Asia. So there are some places where it is still legal to domesticate small cats. I would say I'm not very familiar with the rules of those countries, but I often do see internet pop-ups when I'm making searches on small cats saying leopard cat pet available for sale and things like that. And that is primarily what we've been talking about in this whole conversation, is that they require the same amount of importance that a big cat gets. But unfortunately, because of the similarities with a domestic cat and the overall the charisma factor of that a big cat has is missing in a small cat because of their smaller sizes. So that has led to, yes, a lot of domestication, a lot of hybridization, and a lot of breeding programs for the pet trade for small cats. Yes, it is a big problem.
All right. The second most popular question that we got was, do any of the small cats, wild cats that you talked about, interbreed? I know that you mentioned, the challenge of the interbreeding with the wildcats with the domesticated cats, but within the wildcat communities, do they ever interbreed?
I can only speak confidently with regards to this question for the Indian subcontinent region. And within the Indian subcontinent, there have been no records of small cats breeding with each other. At least naturally, they don't. So they breed with feral cats, but especially in village areas where there is probably a dearth of finding a partner. So sometimes there is a mating with feral cats that happens, but definitely not between two wild species.
Okay. And when those feral cats and small wildcats do interbreed, are they fertile? Like, can they continue to breed beyond that?
Yes. Because the genetic diversity in this case, especially with cats like jungle cats, I don't know about the leopard cat, but within the jungle and the rusty spotted cat, yes, we have seen these crossbreeds also breed further with feral cats and wildcats. So they're actually a problem in that case. Because it's like very similar to what we spoke in the last conversation about the domestic dog and the wolf interbreeding, and that cross that comes out is also a dominant wild canid which can breed further with both wolves and dogs. So like that with regards to small cats like the jungle cat and rusty spotted cat, yes, they are fertile and they can breed further.
I'm happy you brought up the wolves and dogs example. One other person asked whether there is a common lineage from these cats, similar to how there is with wolves and dogs. Did they all evolve from a similar ancestor, if you will? Sorry for my lack of.
Well, there was a particular cat in what we now know as China, and the divergence of cats across the world, as far as my knowledge knows and whatever my reading is that they diverge from China to other places. So in fact, from China, they move to other parts of the world, and that cat, if I remember right, is called the Dinotherium or something. I'm not sure, but the Dinotherium is what if I remember right. But that was probably the common ancestor. And again, that cat probably looked more like a cheetah. It didn't have the perfect retractable claws like the cheetah still doesn't have today. And it was a mid-sized cat. But after that, because of the spread into the different habitats, the tails grew, the legs became shorter, and then a whole lot of different things happened. But yes, there was a ancestor in terms of lineage for all the wildcats in the world. And definitely, if I remember right, it was from what we now know as China.
Excellent. I believe you gave one example of this, but do the larger wildcats prey on the smaller wildcats?
Not as far as I know. I have not come across a situation like that. Like I told you, we rarely see them. When we see them, it's a glimpse and they run, or they just sit amongst a bush. And otherwise, we see them on camera trap. So to get to know intricate details of their behavior, is all we have is their lives in basically in zoos, and that's where a lot of their behavior is studied, and also the populations are studied in the wild. But with regards to how they interact with each other, we almost literally have no knowledge on that front. I can say that the rusty spotted cat and jungle cat are the two cats I've seen together in one area. Like I've seen them together like barely 3 meters away from each other, and there was literally no interaction on that front on that day. But that doesn't mean a jungle cat cannot take down a rusty spotted cat, but it just chose not to on that day. So that's as far as I can speak confidently for that question.
All right. Are any of these small wildcats endangered, and what is being done to protect these small cats in India?
Well, definitely, almost all of them are endangered or their numbers are declining. Some of them are so endangered, like the caracal and the marble cat, that we don't really know how many of those cats are really left in the wild, except that ever so often they come on camera trap. But definitely all of them, if you go to the IUCN status of each of these cats, it will be either endangered or vulnerable. And also, unfortunately, there's also some cats with the status that says data deficient, which is them being honest. We really don't know what the situation is with regards to small cats. And with regards to conservation, what we really need for small cat conservation is, of course, studies. But the essence of small cat conservation is preservation of habitats. So when we create tiger reserves, we are also protecting small cats. When we create national parks, we're protecting small cats. When we create even a biodiversity park, we are protecting small cats. When we make a place wild, we will have small cats. So if you, in fact, one of the interesting projects I was a part of almost 8 years ago was to rewild barren land. And the first thing that we were asked to do is to loosen the soil so that we encourage rodents to come. And the rodents start digging the soil and they encourage regrowth. And the first things that came in were jungle cats. So the rodents came, the jungle cats came, the rodents came, the plants came, the jungle cats came. So it made it very clear that if you give them the habitat and the space, they will find a way to survive, because that's what they do well. They adapt and they are secretive and they can find their niche if they have the protection of the prey base. So that is as far as what we have done with regards to small cat conservation in the country. There are some people working in the desert areas with the desert cat. There are some people working with the fishing cats that live in amongst the fish farms in Calcutta and around. So there are people working in some pockets with specific cats. But overall, with regards to small cat conservation, I would say protecting habitats, creating national parks, and maintaining the sanctity of these national parks is good enough for these small cats to find a way to survive.
All right. Do the small cats live in groups, or do they lead solitary lives? And a related question: do the small cats compete with and kill each other if they come into contact like the big cats do?
Regarding the first question, definitely they are solitary, except when the mother is raising her young ones. Otherwise, all small cats, as far as I know, at least in Indian region for sure, all small cats are solitary. In fact, the only cat which actually moves as a pride is a lion. I don't think any other cat moves in a group anyways, only except for the mother with the young ones. Otherwise, no wild cat in the world, as far as I know, moves in groups. That's the first part of the question. The second part, again, the small cats occupy such interesting niches that there's very limited chance of them encountering each other. And with regards to killing each other, we don't really know. And I know cases of tigers killing jungle cats, or leopards killing leopard cats or jungle cats and things like that. But we have no information on small cats targeting each other. In fact, the only way I would say it is possible is if a fishing cat hunts a jungle cat or a leopard cat, because a fishing cat is considerably bigger. But again, we have no proof of that, so I wouldn't even take a call. In fact, the only written record we have of a fishing cat and a leopard cat coming into contact and hunting was in a zoo in Nepal, if I remember my literature right. And it was an artificial situation where the two were brought together. But in the wild, we have no such proof yet.
I see. Okay, wrapping up here, just two more questions. The first one is for people that are interested in seeing these cats in the wild. What kinds of opportunities are there to be able to see wildcats in India? And sort of related to that, like on any of on the NatHab trips, are there opportunities, or is it likely that one will be able to see these cats, or are there other things that somebody should do if they really want to see these, specifically a safari to see wildcats?
Okay, so that's a very interesting question. So generally, if you come on these safari trips, you have a chance of seeing the jungle cat. But no other wildcat is possible to see on your safari trips, especially the ones which NatHab runs, because they focus on the overall picture. They focus on showcasing the biodiversity. They focus on showcasing the big cats and the large animals and the birds. So when there is so much of things you're taking in on your first trip, it is very hard to focus on small cats. Definitely, I would say that. But with regards to seeing small cats, it is definitely possible. I have seen 13 of the 15 small cats in India. I have 2 more left, which I hope to finish next year. I have to spend probably 2 months on each cat to find the last 2 cats. But I'm going to do that. But yes, if you actually come on a trip focusing on small cats, I can be sure that you will see at least 10 of them if on a trip, simply because, like I told you, most of them hold interesting habitat niches that you can go into the habitat, and if you spend 2-3 days, you're sure to see them, especially if you have access to those habitats in the night, like fishing cats in the fish ponds of Calcutta, a lynx in the high desert, a Pallas's cat in its rocky cave, a jungle cat in the fields, a rusty spotted cat in some of the semi-urban areas, the desert cat in the desert. All of these cats are quite easy to see. But when you look for, when you finish these and you start looking for a leopard cat or a marble cat or a caracal, that will require a little bit more work. So there are people, I have done some small cat tours for some people I know who are very keen to see small cats. And we've done 8 cats, 9 cats, one trip we did 11. But no, on the NatHab trips, it's not going to be easy to see all of them. But if you come specifically looking for them, yes, it is definitely possible. And the best part is when you go looking for small cats throughout the country, you're going to see a whole lot of different things. Because imagine the number of habitats you're covering. Imagine the number of, you're going to see the big cats, you're going to see the elephants, you're going to see the rhinos, because you're going to go into all these habitats looking for small cats. And you will be seeing all the big stuff, but you will be ignoring them because you're looking for the small cats. So it's a very interesting way. It's like how we go on a birding trip and the birders see the most because they're constantly looking out for small things, and so they notice more and they see more. So that's pretty much the same thing with regards to looking for small cats.
All right. Last question here, and there are many more questions. I apologize, we can't get to all of them. We do need to wrap here, but we got this question last time you were on as well. Does Green Humor sell the cat graphics cartoons that you show in here?
Yes, they do. Green Humor, if you go into their website, it's a very rudimentary website, but they sell prints of anything and everything that they have. They have beautiful wildlife maps. They have beautiful illustrations. They have some really funny conservation caricatures. So he's a very, very talented guy, and definitely he doesn't sell digital copies because there's no way for him to sell digital copies because anyone can use it anywhere. But he sells prints. And one of the things I would recommend all of you to look at is the wildlife map of India that he has created. And definitely something for if you have a study or if you're keen on India, you can definitely frame it and put it in your wall, and it's quite fantastic.
Excellent. Well, Surya, thank you so much. It was such a treat to have you back with us again today. I also want to say thanks to everybody in the audience who joined us. Please be sure to join us next week for another set of Daily Doses of Nature. We did record today's presentation, so you'll be receiving that in an email follow-up, and you can also find it on the NatHab website here in the coming days. With that, I will conclude our webinar today. Thank you all, everybody. Thank you, Surya, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much, Ted.